All right, welcome back, and many congratulations. You have now finished the front end section of the course, and this is probably the biggest milestone that you'll have uh, in the whole course, except just one, that you have finished it, right? That you've finished the whole course, you've done everything. That is probably the only bigger milestone than this that you have, right? Because now you have finished like one half of the complete web development that we're going to see, right? Which is like a completely different half from backend. Of course, they are linked, but there are only front-end developers too. There are only back-end developers too, like I said in the intro video, right? So now you are ready to actually, work as one type of the major types of web developers, right? And if paired with a proper back-end developer, or if you're making just a static site, then right now you're ready to make any production level site, and put that out in the open. That's never a problem now. All right. So now we are going to start with the backend, right? And backend is personally my favorite portion, right? I like backend more than front end, but of course that is your own preference, and that does not matter what I like. But backend is actually much more, deep than simple front end. Like we're going to start with what is backend, like a revision. I'd introduce what backend is in the intro, right, in the beginning of the course. But now that we've done a lot of things, I think it's better if we actually revise that once before we start going into a lot of things. And one thing is that for the next couple of days at least, we are going to be a little theoretical, right? We're not going to be writing a lot of code because you actually, right now, you're totally unintroduced to the web development world. And after this, you need to be writing things to actually, set how the development world will be working. So you need to get a lot of idea into a lot of things, like how do they work, and how's the internet work, like not complete details, but a really significant part, or like, okay, what is a request, what is a response, and a lot of things. So we are going to be a little theoretical for the next couple of days, but once we start, I can assure you that it will be actually really interesting, right? So here I have a small image that I took from Google, and this is just a representation. Like this doesn't look to be a lot of difference, but we all know that only 10% of the iceberg is above, and that is the front end, right? Because in the front end you're just setting things up, like how they're going to look, and you can see that on the page, and hence you can change whatever you like to change. The back end, however, works behind the scenes, and you don't even know what's happening. This person right here cannot see this iceberg from below, right? And that is exactly what they've tried to depict here, that the user cannot see the backend, but backend is actually the major portion, according to me too, right? Because you will be writing a lot of logic. Like we see that if we actually try to examine this URL here, slides.com would be just their site, and then a lot of things added in here to get me to this page. And if I go forward, I see this changes to 2, meaning that I am on the second slide, right? So they have a different HTML being printed for different URL, right? Or if I go to, let's say, Reddit. So when I go here and let this load, right? So when I'm just on https www.reddit.com, right? Then I get this homepage, and let's say I search for something. I don't know if I can. I've never used Reddit. I'll just search for solar eclipse. I see something gets added to my this URL right here, and I'm sure this will work too. So I know it doesn't. Alright, it does. Right? So something was added to my URL right here, /search/q is equal to solar. And that gave me the search results for solar on reddit.com. Right? So how did this work? Like how did the browser determine that when we are given /search/q is equal to solar, I have to return this page. And when I do not have that, and I have just this, then I have to return the home page. How was that actually determined, right? How do we determine that? Through the backend, right? And hence, if we try to see exactly what is, like, There are a lot of things in the backend. These are just the things that I put in there as I thought, okay, database, servers, request, whatever was coming into my mind, I was just putting it there, right? And this is what a lot of it would be about. We would be adding databases, of course, they have a database set up at the backend, right? Reddit has a database because they wouldn't have written all of the code inside the HTML. I mean, like the things that are being displayed on the page, they are stored in a database somewhere on the backend, right? And that is what database actually means. Servers, like we'll be setting up servers, and no site can work without a server. If this site is working right now, this is because there is a server running on the backend. We'll see how servers run up, how we set up servers, right? We have requests whenever we're doing something, we're doing anything on the page. We are loading a new page, we are making an account, we are doing anything, we are sending a request, right? So yeah, we'll see requests and URLs. Of course, URLs are part of backend logics, right? So let's say you had a page where, I don't know if they have some page on some site, I can't actually remember, where they show you, oh yeah, on Twitter you have the trending page, right? So how is the trending actually calculated? By the I'm not sure how it's calculated, but let's say it's calculated by the number of tweets that hashtag has, right? So of course they must have done something to actually, calculate that, okay, this has the maximum number, this hashtag has the maximum number of tweets. So that must have taken some logic behind the scenes, right? They must have written some JavaScript to find the maximum number of tweets for a hashtag. That would be the logic. User authentication, of course, a really, really interesting topic. And this adds, when I was learning, I made a site, right? And before the authentication and after the authentication, I felt completely different. After the authentication, my site felt a lot more professional and I felt much, much better about it, right? So making users, logging them in, logging them out, and, a lot of things, that's part of the backend. And of course, a lot of other stuff. These are just the things that I could think of when I said backend in my mind once, right? But I'm sure that there's a lot of other stuff too. And we'll see a lot of other stuff too during the course, right? And so now I'll just introduce a new term which is known as a tech stack, right? So what's a stack? Basically, if you are ever talking to, like, if you are a developer and you're talking to another developer that, you're talking to them for the first time about a site, and you say, listen, I'm making this site and this is what the functionality will be. Then probably one of the first questions that he will ask you is that, what stack are you using, right? Means what technologies are you using? That is what stack basically means, right? That, like, there can be a lot of technologies. Now the backend, right? This is what the backend is. You can write the backend in so many languages, right? You could write it in Python, you could write it in JavaScript, you could write it in Java, or I don't know. There can be a lot of languages. ASP.NET, PHP is probably the most famous old language, right? It was most famous till a long time, I guess, but now there have been other languages. Python has become really popular. Reddit backend is in Python, right? And Facebook is in Python, I think, yeah. And we're going to see JavaScript because JavaScript is actually one of the most popular these times too, right? The JavaScript and Python are probably the most popular. And so you can have a lot of languages, right? So for a particular site, they will ask you what type of technologies are you using, like. And for databases too, you can have a lot of kind of databases. We are going to use MongoDB, or you could have MySQL. You could have a lot of types of databases. So a total list of all the things, all the major technologies that you will be using, who are like the parents of all the technologies, right? That is what you would include in the tech stack, right? And I'll just move on to what our tech stack is. And if you are not clear about tech stack, then you'll get clear by in this slide only, right? So our tech stack, basically the tech stack that we are going to follow in this course and we are going to learn, is the main stack. Not exactly this. We are not going to see this Angularjs. This is actually a front-end framework, and this can make your, you writing your HTML a lot shorter. But we are not going to see this because this can take up a whole lot of time, and covering this along with a lot of other things in 45 days is definitely not feasible. We would have to rush into it, right? So AngularJS definitely has separate courses, and you could take that after that, and you can make a website without Angular too and having the same functionality, because it's just a framework and it just lets you do things easily, right? It does not help you do more things than before. All right, but the basic stack that we're going to see is the mean stack, right? And mean is probably one of the most popular stacks at the moment, right? And if you talk to any developer and they ask you what you're studying, you don't necessarily have to list out MongoDB, Express, and Node.js. You just say mean, and they'll say, "Oh, right, that's great," right? And because this is really, really popular, right? So M in mean stands for MongoDB, which is the database model that we'll be using, right? E stands for Express. Express is basically like you'll get to see what Express is, and N is Node.js, right? Node.js is like the parent of all of this, and this will be kind of the language that we'll be writing. Of course, the JS in this stands for JavaScript, right? Express is also Express.js, so Express is also JavaScript framework, right? So basically, the thing is that we will be doing our backends in JavaScript, right? And there's a reason why we'll be doing that in JavaScript. First, already know JavaScript, right? So if you are being currently introduced to the programming world for the first time, then it doesn't make sense that you learn another language for the front end and then you immediately learn another language for the back end. You will get confused because of that. So it's actually really helpful that you can just use the same language in the front end and the back end, and you can get comfortable with it. And eventually, if you're going into a professional scenario, then you will learn the other languages too at some point of time, right? But for now, we can start with JavaScript, and that's great, right? And yeah, so that is our tech stack, and that is the intro to a backend, right? And again, I'll just see that backend is something that the user does not see, and these are all the kinds of stuff that we handle using the backend. This is what a tech stack is, and this is our tech stack. Again, this is basically like a overview of the whole backend, and you can see we still have a lot of days left in the course, and we are going to cover backend in all of those days, right? So it definitely is the fact that you will learn a much more about all of these than just the brief overview that I'm giving you in this video, right? So you'll get a lot more comfortable with what MongoDB is, Express is, Node.js is, and we'll start. So I'm excited. Let's start with the backend, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.